Hiya, Eric Boehlert. How are you?
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, I just loved your tweet of just OMG about Florida. The state of Florida reports 21,683 new coronavirus cases, the largest one-day increase on record. 108 new deaths and over 10,000 plus are currently hospitalized across the state. You just said mind-boggling. Florida has as many new daily cases as all of Russia.
Yeah, and France. Yeah.
And we covered last week all the headlines about how Ron DeSantis did apparently such a fantastic job there, right?
Yeah, and none of those news outlets have come around. CNN, Politico, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. None of them are stepping forward, of course, because when the media fails and liberals call them out, there's no need to do anything.
Right.
But if media fails and conservatives call them out, I mean, people lose jobs. There's long posts from the editor. I mean, there's top to bottom overhaul. But yeah, we talked about last week how the media rushed in the spring, dying to find some sort of Republican COVID star after the Trump fiasco and oversaw the death of 600,000 people. Look, and in the other trend I'm seeing now is I saw the Washington Post, again, CNN, New York Times, articles in the last kind of 48, 72 hours. Whoa, this surge is bad news for Biden. Boy, this really puts his legislative agenda in the bind. Well, he's not really able to communicate with the country. And virtually none of these stories point out the surge is being driven by a coordinated, partisan, anti-vaccine crusade.
Right.
This isn't just happening.
Yes.
As we've talked about before, minus possibly Brazil, we are the only country on the planet that has an organized billion-dollar orchestrated campaign to keep the pandemic going.
Yeah. I forget what state it was that just had, I don't know, tens of thousands of vaccines go bad. One of the red states that couldn't.
Arkansas, Iowa, they're all throwing these vaccines away. Yep.
Yeah. When I have friends literally around the world dying for these vaccines and they can't get them. And as you said, if you read the CNN report, the latest surge just magically happened. And, I'm glad, Eric, the White House is pushing back about, irresponsible. Well, let me just hang on. Let me grab it here. Irresponsible Delta coverage being done for ratings. They're reaching out to news outlets to get them to dial back their overheated and irresponsible coverage of the Delta variant, which they believe is being done for eyeballs at the expense of a crucial vaccination effort. Several news outlets have already faced stiff public backlash over reckless framing of things like the number of breakthrough COVID cases, which is vanishingly small as a percentage of vaccinated people, and the susceptibility of vaccinated people to the Delta variant, which is very, very low, and the rate at which vaccinated people can transmit the variant. Which White House person in all caps just said vaccinated people do not transmit the virus at the same rate as unvaccinated people, and if you fail to include that context, you're doing it wrong. They said the media's coverage doesn't match the moment. It has been hyperbolic and frankly irresponsible in a way that hardens vaccine hesitancy. The biggest problem we have is unvaccinated people getting and spreading the virus. As the Biden official explained to me, the administration is worried the media's focus on these instances of breakthrough infections might lead people to being more hesitant to get a vaccine. Think about it. If you're a young person, you already believe you'll be okay. If you do get infected, why would you now get a vaccine, given that the coverage suggests you can still but just as easily become infected and spread the virus after receiving the shot? So that's right, is what they said. Vaccinated people do not transmit the virus at the same rate. So
that's right.
Yeah, and you said, the NBC headline, 125,000 people, fully vaccinated Americans tested positive for COVID. You said out of 162 million vaccinated Americans. As you always say, Eric, context, please.
Okay, yes, I guess it is surprising that we are having breakthrough cases. I mean, it's always been described as this vaccine being 98, 99% effective. Turns out it's 99.7% effective.
Right.
And the press last week decided that 0.03 was the news. The handling of the Provincetown outbreak was poorly done. The city manager had to get on Twitter and saying, look, our testing is through the roof. Therefore, our number of cases is going to be higher. People who have it barely have symptoms. This is not, we are not falling off the edges of the earth here. in Provincetown. But look, and I don't think this bad media coverage happened in a vacuum. We still have way too many political reporters trying to cover a health crisis.
Yes.
And so they're reading off Republican talking points. They're being kind of infected by Fox News. And okay, these reporters don't agree with Fox News, all this anti-vaxxer stuff. But in the back of their head, they're thinking, well, maybe this doesn't work. Well, maybe people are reluctant for a reason. And so I think that fuels this really bad coverage, and it's kind of got you coverage. And it goes back to the point I made earlier. I think a lot of the coverage now is trying to ding Biden. Oh, this was going to be his big success. Well, maybe it's not going to be a success. Why? And just a real quick point, we keep seeing story after story. Oh, I didn't take the vaccine. Now I'm in the hospital. Now I wish I had the vaccine. And virtually none of those stories address where the misinformation comes from. Why won't people get the vaccine? It's called the Murdoch variant.
Yeah, I'm having a brain fart. Who was president during polio?
Well, polio kind of.
Yes, it's Brute Street. Yeah. But I mean, seriously, if there'd been Fox News, right?
Well, why don't you just say FDR because he had polio?
Right. Oh, FDR fails. His stupid polio.
Okay.
Whatever. I mean, we just didn't have it. I mean,
no.
So
and just
go ahead.
And just real quick, all these people who are marching and protesting, going on Fox News, none of them could have showed up for kindergarten when they were kids without their vaccination. Yeah. Vaccinations are not new in this country. They're not controversial. They're not dangerous.
There's pictures of kids with masks on. George Washington ordered the army to have smallpox vaccine. This is none of it's new. And anyway, but talk about red state governors. Christy Thom tweeted, workers whose employees are mandating a vaccine for continuing employment have the power to say no. You're like Republican governor to workers. Get yourself fired. And you said same governor who says workers are lazy and relying on government benefits. Thank you. Stop with lionizing these idiot right-wing governors that are, proposing death sentences, basically, or economic hardship on their constituents.
No, and that's extraordinary because they're not going to turn around. There is no point of return for any of these people. We talked about DeSantis. Florida is now the epicenter of the country, if not the world, for this. And what's he doing? They double and triple down. He's demanding that as you mentioned, no masks be allowed to be worn in school. So there is no reasoning with these people. There's not going to be an aha moment. They will let as many people die as necessary because they are committed to this cult-like mentality.
This goes right to 1-6 too. You said GOP lying about 1-6 period, but the New York Times won't say lying. Here we go again, right? I mean. And it is so serious this time. You just put this to someone that tweeted, democracy is crumbling much faster than in Weimar Germany. People of goodwill must answer the call and do anything they can to stomp the Republicans in the next two elections. Because, I was just saying earlier, Eric, okay, they're saying, this may be not illegal, what Trump did, but, if it had succeeded, we'd be in an autocracy and it's too late. So, I mean, that's where we are. I think, Daniel Dale was talking about the DOJ notes thing, and you said during Watergate, this exact type of communication became known as the smoking gun of Nixon's demise. For Trump, it's just another day at the office.
And so the DOJ released these phone notes, December 27th, Trump calling his acting attorney general, his attorney general quit because he didn't want to be part of this coup. He calls his acting attorney general and says, you got to call this election cover up, leave the rest to me. I don't think this was discussed on a single Sunday show yesterday. I don't think it was discussed.
Yeah.
It's the normalization is just rampant. As I just put up a piece this morning at PressRun Media about this Washington Post piece they ran on late last week about all the things Trump got right. And it's just like on the same day that the DOJ confirmed this coup attempt. It's just mind-boggling. We have an radical autocrat waiting in the wings to become the nominee in 2024, and the Beltway press is just like, this is going to be fun. Yeah, this is going to be great.
They're treated it the exact same way as they did Hillary. Like, won't that be exciting if she runs again? Yeah. Remember that? How they were so.
Yeah, a little different. And CNN did a piece over the weekend. The amount of attention Trump has received as a former president is unprecedented. And he's not even on Twitter and Facebook. Imagine if he had social media platforms. He would be covered as if he were president of the United States. And so the Beltway press looks at this. Forget the coup. Forget the insurrection. Yeah. Forget all that stuff. He's just a savvy political player. And the Washington Post actually devoted 3,000 words to talk about all the things he got right.
This is all
contrarian piece.
Yeah, this is all normal. Mark Meadows referring to him as the president, as if meeting with his cabinet, as if he's. I mean, this is all normal. By the way, you brought up Nixon, Andrea Juncker. Thank you. We should all be students of history, maybe because of who my dad's running mate was. She tweeted in 1974, Republican congressman went to the White House to tell Nixon it was time to resign over Watergate. In 2020, Republican congressman went to the White House to conspire with Trump to overturn the election. From leaders to traitors. I mean, another piece of history. She tweets, just a casual reminder that in 1861, 11 senators and 3 representatives were expelled from Congress for failing to recognize Lincoln's election and supporting the insurrection. Like,
oh, wow.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you've read a history book, you should be really alarmed with what's happening, right, Eric?
And real quick, did you see Jim Jordan last week? A couple of people asked him, "Oh, what were your conversations you had with Trump on January 6th, the day of the insurrection?" And he could not give a straight answer. I can't remember what I talked about. Yeah, I bet.
By the way, I knew there was something other than yay America good about the Olympics. No Chuck Todd for 2 weeks. You wrote a piece, Chuck Todd and the Myth of Liberal Bias, GOP Bullying Works. This whole should be called Now a Warning. This is the Now a Warnings. I guess you said like every few years Chuck Todd wakes up and says something like this. He said, we should have fought back better in the mainstream media. We shouldn't have accepted the premise there was liberal bias. We should have defended. We ended up in this both sides trope. We bought into the idea that, oh my God, we're perceived as having a liberal bias. Where do we get lost in this? And this sort of happened to mainstream media in particular, is that we let Republican critics get in our heads, right? The Republicans have been running on there's liberal bias in the media. This has been a 45-year campaign.
Now a warning?
But as you say, the bad news is he goes back to work at NBC and rarely follows his own advice. He makes no structural changes to the programs he oversees to make sure they don't fall prey to GOP tactics. It's easy to view his pronouncements as performative. And then you said a quick example during Donald Trump's impeachment. They interviewed voters from a toss-up district in Michigan. Every single one of them was a Republican.
Yeah, Meet the Press. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I guess the good news is people like Chuck Todd and people who are in positions of power, elite positions of media power, they understand they're being played. They understand they're being rolled by the GOP. They understand there's this deep-pocketed 5-decade-long campaign to belittle and to besmirch the press. And they realize it changes their behavior because Chuck Todd, in the recent interview, acknowledged all that. The downside is none of them do anything about it because they don't want to risk their careers. And, they have great jobs. And if you're a host of Meet the Press, your whole point is to book the guests.
Yep.
Right.
And once you have booked the guests, your job is kind of done. Yes, you ask them some questions, and occasionally, 3 times a year, Chuck Todd will hold these Republicans accountable in any kind of serious way.
And then
that's it.
And then we'll literally have to leave it there.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason I did that piece really is so many people ask me, and I'm sure they ask you, why does the press do this? Why is there a failure? Why did they refuse to call Trump a liar for 4 years? And it really does go back. The central cultural element in all of this is the fear of being tagged liberal media bias. It can affect your career. It can affect your standing. All the cool kids. So what you do is you spend so much time trying to prove you're not part of the liberal media bias. So you do both sides. So you do, just really bad journalism, the kind we document all the time. And it's really driven by this careerist fear.
Thank you. And this is why we don't have smallpox or polio anymore, because both sides didn't do it. It was all of us against polio. All right, Eric, great stuff as always. We linked to your piece. Solo Brad O'Brien reminds you it is critical
that you
subscribe to Press Run. All right, Eric, thanks so much.